10 years of marriage deserved celebration, or so I thought as I sat across from my wife at Romano's, the city's most expensive steakhouse. The candlelight flickered across Mira's face as she checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. "Work emergency," she said, touching my hand with that apologetic smile I'd seen countless times before. "2 minutes, I promise." I watched her stand and smooth her black dress, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She walked past our table, past the restrooms, straight toward the bar at the back of the restaurant. 14 steps. I counted each one. The man waiting by the brass rail wore a gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Expensive watch caught the light as he raised his hand to her waist. She didn't hesitate. Her mouth found his in a kiss that lasted longer than our conversation over dinner. I set down my wine glass and stood up. The walk to the bar felt like crossing a minefield, every step deliberate, every breath measured. I pulled out the stool beside them and sat down, close enough to smell his cologne and her perfume mixing in the air between them. "Waiter," I called to the bartender, keeping my voice steady and pleasant. "Put their drinks on my tab." The man's glass stopped halfway to his lips. Mira's face went through a fascinating cycle of emotions. Confusion first, then recognition, then something approaching terror. "It's the least I can do," I continued, "for my wife's divorce attorney. Damon Vellick. I'd done my research. 15 years practicing family law in this city, retained by Mira 6 months ago according to the credit card charge I'd found on our joint account. Consultation fee, it said. First of many meetings. "Cole," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible over the restaurant noise. "Hello, sweetheart, Damon." I nodded to each of them. "Don't let me interrupt. You were discussing strategy, I assume? Asset division? Custody arrangements?" Damon found his voice first. Lawyers always do. "Mr. Archer, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken of her credit card statements. 47 consultations in 6 months. Average duration 3 hours each. Your paralegal was very helpful when I called. She confirmed that actual legal work for a simple divorce requires maybe 5 hours total. The color drained from Mira's face. Damon's jaw tightened. "The rest was off the books, I assume? Client development, as you probably write it off on your taxes." I showed them the hotel charges, same dates as the consultations, adjacent line items on Mira's hidden credit card. She paid for the rooms. Classy touch. "You're making a scene," Mira hissed, glancing around the restaurant. "Am I? I thought I was just having drinks with my wife and her legal counsel." I signaled the bartender. "Another round for my friends here. They'll need it." Damon leaned forward, trying to regain control. "Whatever you think you know, I know you've been building her case while building something else entirely. Asset concealment strategies, custody angles that paint me as an unfit father, affair evidence against me that doesn't exist." I smiled at him. "All while sleeping with your client. That's a fascinating approach to family law." The bartender set fresh drinks in front of them. Neither moved to touch them. "The ethics board received some interesting documentation yesterday," I continued conversationally. "Relationship with a client during active representation, conflict of interest, fraud upon the court, career-ending violations according to my attorney." "Your attorney?" Mira's voice cracked. I checked my watch. "She should be here any minute, actually. Helena Vero, former prosecutor, board certified. You might know her, Damon. She handled the Kellerman case that got your colleague disbarred last year." As if summoned, Helena walked through the restaurant's front door, tall, sharp-suited, carrying the leather briefcase that had intimidated opposing counsel for the past decade. She spotted our table and headed over. "That's my cue." I stood up and straightened my jacket. "The tab's covered. Consider it a retainer for my own legal representation." I walked back to our table, leaving Mira and Damon frozen at the bar like mannequins in a store window. Helena arrived just as I sat down. "How did it go?" she asked, settling into Mira's abandoned chair. "Better than expected. They're still processing." Helena opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "The ethics complaint was filed this morning. Bar Association will begin their investigation within 48 hours. His license will be suspended pending review." "And the divorce proceedings?" "Any case he's built becomes inadmissible due to the conflict of interest. She'll need new representation, and any strategy they develop together is compromised." Helena smiled grimly. "She's starting over from scratch, and every family court judge in the city will know why." I glanced back at the bar. Mira was crying now, quiet tears that she tried to hide behind her hand. Damon was on his phone, probably calling his own lawyer. "There's more," Helena continued, sliding a document across the table. "Financial records show she's been moving money to offshore accounts, small amounts but consistent. We can prove intent to hide marital assets." "How much?" $43,000 over 8 months, plus the retainer fees to Damon, hotel expenses, and what appears to be rent on an apartment downtown." "The apartment?" I'd suspected but hadn't confirmed. "She was planning to leave." "More than planning. She was already gone, just hadn't told you yet." Helena closed the folder. "The question now is how far you want to take this." I looked around Romano's, at the other couples enjoying their anniversary dinners, oblivious to the drama unfolding 20 feet away. Normal people with normal problems. I used to be one of them. "All the way," I said. The next morning, Mira didn't come home. I sat at our kitchen table drinking coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other Tuesday. The silence felt different now. Not empty, but expectant. Like the moment before thunder. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. D. Damon." Bold of him to contact me directly, considering his legal situation. I typed back, "Romano's, 1 hour, bring your checkbook." I arrived early and claimed the same table from last night. The irony felt appropriate. When Damon walked in, he looked like he'd slept in his expensive suit. His usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by the desperate energy of a man watching his career implode in real time. "This doesn't have to get ugly," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "It's already ugly. You made sure of that when you decided to represent my wife while sleeping with her." I sipped my coffee. "But I'm listening." "The ethics complaint. You could withdraw it. Claim it was filed in anger, that you've reconsidered." "Could I?" "That's interesting legal advice. Are you still representing Mira, or is this conversation about your own problems?" His jaw twitched. "She's retained new counsel. Our professional relationship is terminated. But not your personal one." "That's none of your business," I laughed. "Everything about this is my business. She's still my wife, technically. You're still the man who helped her plan to destroy me. That makes it very much my business." Damon leaned forward. "What do you want?" "Justice, accountability, your complete professional ruin." I set down my cup. "But I'm open to negotiation." "Money?" "I don't want your money, Damon. I want something more valuable." "Which is?" "Information. About Mira's plans, about the money she moved, about who else was involved in this little conspiracy." His face went carefully blank. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. 47 meetings in 6 months. You weren't just planning a divorce and having an affair. You were building something bigger. A complete identity destruction, character assassination, financial ruin." I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot. "Like this email you sent to my employer, suggesting they investigate my unstable behavior and concerning statements about my marriage." The color drained from his face. "Or this one to my daughter's school, expressing concern about my emotional state and recommending they monitor my interactions with Sophie." "You hacked my email?" "I'm an IT contractor, Damon. It's what I do." I put the phone away. The question is, who gave you the script? Because this level of coordinated character assassination isn't standard divorce strategy. Someone coached you. He was sweating now, despite the restaurant's air conditioning. Mira's not smart enough to orchestrate this alone, I continued. She's impulsive, emotional. This required planning, patience, and a deep understanding of how to systematically destroy someone's life. So who's the puppet master? I want immunity. You want immunity? From me? I'm not the district attorney. From prosecution. From further ethics complaints. From whatever else you're planning. I considered this. In exchange for what? Everything. Names, dates, the complete strategy. But I wanted in writing that you'll leave me alone afterward. Deal. But I record our conversation. He nodded reluctantly. I started the voice recorder on my phone and set it between us. Tell me about Alexis Firth. His eyes widened. How did you... Lex has been Mira's best friend since college. She's also been present for every major decision in our marriage. Every fight, every reconciliation, every moment of doubt. I leaned back in my chair. She was the one who suggested Mira hire a divorce attorney 6 months ago, wasn't she? Yes. She was the one who recommended you specifically. Yes. And she was the one who suggested the character assassination strategy. Damon hesitated, then nodded. Lex said you were dangerous, that you'd try to turn everyone against Mira if she left you normally. She said you needed to be neutralized first. Neutralized? Interesting word choice. I made a note on my napkin. What else did Lex suggest? The financial transfers, the apartment lease, the documentation of your threatening behavior. What threatening behavior? There wasn't any. We were supposed to create it. Provoke you into reactions that could be misinterpreted. Record conversations out of context. Build a pattern of evidence. The scope of it was breathtaking. Not just a divorce, but a complete destruction of my life, my reputation, my relationship with my daughter, all orchestrated by my wife's best friend. Why? I asked. What did I ever do to Lex? She said you ruined her career. Something about a promotion she didn't get because of you. I searched my memory. 5 years ago, Lex had applied for a senior position at her company. They'd called me as a reference, since I'd worked on their IT systems. I'd been honest about her performance. Professional, but not exceptional. Competent, but not leadership material. She didn't get the job. This is about a reference check? 5 years ago? She's been planning this ever since, waiting for the right opportunity. When Mira started complaining about your marriage last year, Lex saw her chance. The pieces fell into place. Every marital problem over the past year, every argument, every moment of distance between Mira and me. Lex had been there, offering support, providing perspective, gently pushing Mira toward resentment and eventual betrayal. Where is Mira now? Staying with Lex and her husband. They have a guest room. Of course they did. Lex was still playing the supportive friend, still pulling the strings. The apartment downtown? Lex's idea. A place for Mira to meet with me privately, somewhere you wouldn't find. I turned off the recorder. Thank you for your honesty. Our deal will be honored. You've given me what I need. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. Good luck with the ethics investigation. I hear they're very thorough. I left him sitting there, staring at his untouched coffee, probably wondering if he'd just made his situation better or worse. The answer was worse. Much worse. Lex lived in a converted warehouse downtown, the kind of trendy space that cost 3 times what my suburban house was worth. I parked across the street and watched the building for an hour, noting the security cameras, the doorman, the general flow of residents and visitors. My phone buzzed. Helena. The ethics board moved faster than expected. Damon's license was suspended this morning. Emergency hearing scheduled for next week. Good. What about the financial records? We've frozen the offshore accounts. Mira's new attorney filed an objection, but the judge sided with us. She can't touch that money until the divorce is settled. And custody? With Damon's credibility destroyed, her case for sole custody collapsed. Joint custody is the most likely outcome now, assuming she doesn't make any more strategic errors. I was counting on her making more strategic errors. With Lex whispering in her ear, it was almost guaranteed. I need surveillance on Alexis Firth. Professional level. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to, every move she makes. That's expensive. Bill it to the divorce. Legitimate investigation expenses. I'll make some calls. I hung up and continued watching the building. At 2:30, Lex emerged with Mira. They walked to a nearby coffee shop, heads close together in intense conversation. Through the window, I could see Lex doing most of the talking, Mira nodding and occasionally wiping her eyes. The master and the puppet. I followed them at a distance when they left the coffee shop. They visited a bank, a real estate office, and a legal aid clinic, building Mira's new life, one strategic step at a time. That evening, I drove to Lex's husband David's office. He sold commercial real estate from a small firm in the business district. I found him working late, alone in the building. Cole? He looked surprised when I walked into his office. What are you doing here? David Firth was a decent man trapped in an indecent situation. Married to Lex for 12 years, he'd watched her manipulate and control everyone around them while pretending not to notice. The perfect enabler. We need to talk about your wife. His face went carefully neutral. I don't think that's appropriate. Nothing about this situation is appropriate. But here we are. I sat down across from his desk. How long have you known about Lex's plan to destroy my marriage? I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You've been married to her long enough to recognize her patterns, the way she identifies targets, builds relationships, waits for the perfect moment to strike. I leaned forward. The question is whether you're complicit or just willfully ignorant. David's hands trembled slightly as he shuffled papers on his desk. Lex is passionate about protecting her friends. Is that what she calls it? Protection? I pulled out my phone and played part of my recorded conversation with Damon. David's face went pale as he heard the details of the conspiracy. She told me Mira was in an abusive marriage, he whispered. Did she show you evidence? Bruises, medical records, police reports? No, but because there isn't any, there never was. Your wife manufactured a crisis to justify her revenge fantasy. David stared at his hands. What do you want from me? Information about Lex's other targets, about her methods, about how deep this goes. Other targets? You think I'm the first person she's done this to? Come on, David. You know your wife better than that. He was quiet for a long time, wrestling with something internal. Finally, he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. She keeps records, he said quietly. Names, dates, strategies. She calls it her Justice Project. I opened the folder. Inside were detailed files on 6 different people. A former boss who'd passed her over for promotion, a college roommate who'd dated someone Lex wanted, a neighbor who'd complained about their dog. Each file contained personal information, relationship details, and what appeared to be action plans for systematic harassment and reputation destruction. How many of these has she actually executed? 3 before you, maybe 4. I tried not to pay attention. The scope of it was staggering. Lex wasn't just vindictive. She was a serial destroyer of lives, using her position as a trusted friend to gain access to her target's vulnerabilities. Why haven't you stopped her? David laughed bitterly. Have you ever tried to stop Lex from doing something she's set her mind to? She's relentless, and she's very good at making her targets look like they deserve what happens to them. Not this time. You think you can beat her? The others thought that too. I closed the folder and stood up. The others didn't have what I have. Which is? Nothing left to lose, and a very specific set of skills. I left David sitting in his office, staring at the empty space where his wife's secret files had been. By morning, copies would be in Helena's hands and with the police. Lex's other victims deserved justice too. But first, I had a puppet master to expose. The next evening, I waited in the lobby of Lex's building until another resident opened the security door, then slipped inside. The elevator carried me to the 15th floor in silence. I could hear voices through the door of apartment 15C, Mira and Lex planning their next move. I knocked. Lex opened the door, her expression shifting from surprise to calculation in the span of a heartbeat. "Cole, this is unexpected." "Is it? I thought we should talk, all three of us." Mira appeared behind her, eyes red from crying. "You shouldn't be here." "Probably not, but here I am anyway." I stepped past Lex into their living room. Expensive furniture, abstract art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of space that screamed success and sophistication. "I've been having interesting conversations lately," I said, settling into their leather couch without invitation. "With your divorce attorney, for instance. Former divorce attorney, I should say. His license was suspended this morning." Lex's face remained perfectly composed. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Because according to Damon, this entire situation was your idea. The affair, the divorce strategy, the character assassination campaign, all of it. That's ridiculous." I pulled out my phone and played a segment of my recorded conversation with Damon. Lex's voice came through clearly, giving detailed instructions on how to provoke me into reactions that could be used against me in court. Mira's face went white. "Lex, what is this?" "It's your best friend orchestrating the destruction of your marriage for her own personal revenge," I answered. "Tell her about the promotion, Lex. The one you didn't get 5 years ago because I gave an honest reference. You ruined my career." I answered their questions honestly. "You ruined your own career by not being qualified for the position." Lex's composure finally cracked. "You had no right to judge me." "I had every right to tell the truth when they asked for a reference. What I didn't have was the right to lie to help you get a job you weren't ready for." I turned to Mira. "She's been planning this for 5 years. Every complaint you've had about our marriage, every doubt you've expressed, every moment of unhappiness, she's been there to amplify it, to push you toward this exact outcome." "That's not true," Mira whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Think about it. When did you first start considering divorce? Right after Lex got passed over for that promotion. When did you first meet Damon? At a party Lex invited you to. When did you start moving money to secret accounts? Right after Lex suggested you needed financial independence." Mira turned to her best friend. "Lex? I was protecting you," Lex said. "He was controlling you, manipulating you. I helped you see the truth." "The truth? Or your version of it?" I stood up and walked to their window. "Mira, in 10 years of marriage, did I ever hit you? No. Threaten you? No. Control your finances, isolate you from friends, monitor your activities? No, but nothing. I was a normal husband with normal flaws in a normal marriage. Not perfect, but not abusive. Not controlling, but not exciting. The kind of ordinary relationship that most people work to improve rather than destroy." I turned back to face them. "Lex convinced you to destroy it instead of fixing it because she needed you to be as miserable as she was." "You don't understand," Lex said. "You men are all the same. You take and take until there's nothing left. I understand perfectly. You're a predator who feeds on other people's happiness because you can't create your own." The apartment fell silent, except for the distant hum of traffic 15 floors below. "I found your files," I continued. 6 targets over 8 years. Systematic harassment, reputation destruction, relationship sabotage. You're not Mira's protector. You're a serial destroyer of lives." Lex's face went pale. "You broke into my home?" "I didn't have to. Your husband gave them to me. Turns out he's tired of being married to a sociopath. David did, along with a detailed statement about your methods and previous victims. The police are very interested in patterns of stalking and harassment. Mira was staring at Lex like she was seeing her for the first time. The files? Names, addresses, personal information, attack strategies. Your best friend has been running a one-woman campaign of terror for nearly a decade. I pulled out copies of some of the documents. Here's her plan for destroying her former boss's marriage. Here's how she got her college roommate fired from 3 different jobs. Here's her strategy for driving the neighbor's family out of their home. Mira took the papers with shaking hands, scanning the detailed notes and timelines. And here, I said, handing her the thickest file, is her plan for you. Every conversation you've had, every weakness she identified, every step in your manipulation. You weren't her friend, Mira. You were her project. The file contained transcripts of their conversations, psychological profiles, and detailed analysis of my habits and vulnerabilities. Lex had been studying us both like laboratory specimens. 12 years, Mira whispered. 12 years of friendship. 12 years of preparation, I corrected. She's been waiting for the right opportunity to use you against me since the day I cost her that promotion. Lex finally found her voice. Get out of my home. Gladly. But first, I want you to understand something. I stepped closer to her, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. You picked the wrong target this time. The others you destroyed were probably decent people who didn't see it coming. But I'm not decent, and I saw it coming from the moment I found those hotel receipts. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. Everything you've done to me, to Mira, to your other victims, it's all coming back. The police, the ethics board, your employer, your social circle, everyone you've manipulated over the years. They're all going to know exactly what you are. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Lex. Your husband is filing for divorce tomorrow. Helena's representing him. She's very thorough. I left them standing in their expensive living room, surrounded by the wreckage of their conspiracy. In the elevator, I could hear raised voices through the walls. The puppet was finally seeing her strings. The neighborhood block party was Lex's idea, of course. An annual tradition she'd organized for the past 3 years, bringing together residents from a 6-block radius for food, music, and community bonding. This year's theme was New Beginnings. The irony was perfect. I arrived at 6 o'clock, carrying a folding chair and a small cooler. The street had been blocked off, and dozens of neighbors milled around tables loaded with potluck dishes. A local band played classic rock covers from a small stage at the intersection. Helena found me near the beer tent. Everything's in place. The files have been distributed to the appropriate authorities. Lex's employer received their copies this morning. And David? Moved out yesterday. He's staying at a hotel until the divorce is finalized. She handed me a thick envelope. Final divorce papers. Mira signed them this morning. I opened the envelope and scanned the documents. Joint custody of Sophie. Equitable division of assets. No alimony. The offshore accounts would be returned to our joint holdings and split 50-50. She didn't fight it? After seeing those files, she couldn't get away from this situation fast enough. She's moving back to her sister's place in Chicago next month. And Lex? Suspended from her job pending investigation. 3 of her previous victims have filed formal complaints with the police. Her professional reputation is finished. I folded the papers and put them back in the envelope. Good. Cole. Helena's voice carried a note of warning. Whatever you're planning for tonight, be careful. You've already won. Don't give them ammunition for a comeback. I smiled. Trust me. At 7:30, Lex took the stage to welcome everyone to the party. She looked composed, professional, every inch the community organizer, but I could see the strain around her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she adjusted the microphone. Thank you all for coming to our annual block party, she began. This year's theme is particularly meaningful to me. New beginnings represent hope, growth, and the courage to change our lives for the better. The crowd applauded politely. I made my way closer to the stage, positioning myself where she could see me. Sometimes, Lex continued, we have to make difficult choices to protect the people we care about. Sometimes we have to take action when we see injustice or abuse. She was trying to control the narrative even now, painting herself as a protector rather than a predator. But true new beginnings require honesty, I called out, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Don't they, Lex? She froze, microphone halfway to her mouth. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people turned to look at me. I'm sorry, she said, forcing a smile. I don't think this is the appropriate time. When is the appropriate time to discuss systematic harassment, stalking, conspiracy to commit fraud? I stepped closer to the stage. When is the right time to talk about the files you keep on your neighbors, documenting their personal lives and planning their destruction? The crowd was fully focused now, sensing drama. Several people had pulled out their phones to record. I think you should leave, Lex said, her composure cracking. Should I? Like you made the Hendersons leave after you convinced their landlord they were dealing drugs? Like you made Sarah Chen leave her job after you spread rumors about her stealing from the company? Like you tried to make me leave my marriage after you spent 5 years manipulating my wife? The crowd was buzzing now, neighbors whispering to each other, connecting dots, remembering incidents they'd previously attributed to coincidence or bad luck. I pulled out copies of Lex's files and held them up. 6 targets over 8 years. Detailed psychological profiles, attack strategies, systematic campaigns of reputation destruction. All because she's a vindictive sociopath who can't handle rejection or criticism. Security, Lex called, but there was no security. This was a neighborhood block party, not a corporate event. The police have copies of these files now, I continued, addressing the crowd rather than Lex, along with statements from her victims and her own husband, who's divorcing her for being a manipulative predator. Someone in the crowd called out, "What files?" I opened the folder and began reading. Target, Sarah Chen. Weakness, insecurity about job performance. Strategy, anonymous complaints to HR about attitude and reliability. Timeline, 6 months to termination. Gasps from the crowd. Sarah Chen lived 2 blocks away. Several neighbors knew her story. Target, Henderson family. Weakness, irregular income, cash rent payments. Strategy, anonymous tip to landlord about drug activity, followed by noise complaints and property damage reports. More murmurs. The Hendersons had moved suddenly 6 months ago, claiming harassment from neighbors and their landlord. Target, Cole Archer. Weakness, ordinary marriage with normal problems. Strategy, convince wife that normal equals abusive, facilitate affair with divorce attorney, coordinate character assassination campaign. I looked up at Lex, who stood frozen at the microphone like a deer in headlights. The only question, I said to the crowd, is how many of you have been targets without knowing it? How many unexplained problems, mysterious complaints, anonymous tips to employers or landlords? How many of your personal crises were actually manufactured by your friendly neighborhood sociopath? The crowd was turning now, looking at Lex with suspicion and growing anger. She tried to speak into the microphone, but someone had cut the power. Her voice came out thin and desperate. This is all lies. He's unstable, dangerous. He's been stalking me, threatening me. Have I? I pulled out my phone and played the recording of our conversation in her apartment. Her voice came through clearly, admitting to the conspiracy, justifying her actions, revealing her true nature. The crowd erupted. Shouts of anger, demands for answers, accusations flying. Lex backed away from the microphone, looking for an escape route, but she was surrounded by 3 years' worth of neighbors she'd manipulated and betrayed. I climbed onto the stage and took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Alexis Firth, community organizer, devoted friend, and serial destroyer of lives. Let's give her the new beginning she deserves. The crowd's response was immediate and unanimous. Boos, catcalls, demands that she leave the neighborhood. Someone threw a plastic cup that bounced off the stage near her feet. Lex finally found her voice. "You're all making a mistake. He's manipulating you, just like he manipulated his wife." "Where is his wife?" someone called out. "Moved to Chicago," I answered. "After she discovered that her best friend had been manipulating her for 5 years to get revenge on me for giving an honest job reference." The crowd's anger reached a crescendo. Lex looked around desperately, then pushed through the crowd toward the street. People parted to let her pass, but followed her with their voices, shouting questions and accusations. I watched from the stage as she reached her car, fumbling with her keys while neighbors surrounded her vehicle. She finally got the door open and dove inside, starting the engine and driving away with angry voices echoing behind her. The crowd gradually calmed down, people clustering in small groups to discuss what they'd just witnessed. Several neighbors approached me with questions about the files, wanting to know if they'd been targeted. Helena appeared at my elbow. "That was thorough. It was necessary. She would have found new targets, new victims. This way, everyone knows what she is." "And now?" I looked around at the block party, at the neighbors still buzzing with conversation and revelation. The band had started playing again, trying to restore some normalcy to the evening. "Now I go home," I said. "Pour myself a drink, start figuring out what my actual new beginning looks like." I walked through the crowd toward my car, nodding to neighbors who called out support or asked follow-up questions. The envelope with my divorce papers felt light in my jacket pocket. 10 years of marriage officially ended. 5 years of manipulation finally exposed. The puppet master was gone. The puppets were free. And I was exactly where I'd planned to be from the moment I sat down next to my wife and her lover at Romano's steakhouse. Alone, but not defeated. Divorced, but not destroyed. Free to build whatever came next, without strings attached. I got in my car and drove home through the summer evening, leaving the block party and its revelations behind me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. Tonight, justice was enough.